Call it the Coyotes controversy. When it was announced that the Shelby Coyotes football program would be set to drop down to the 8-man ranks for the fall of 2018, that decision was met with some controversy as well as numerous complaints. Shelby was, of course, coming off a Class B state runner-up finish the year before, but 11 seniors were lost to graduation, and projections showed right around 26 student athletes were likely to try out for the football team this fall. Now, while the move for Shelby may have seemed sudden to many across the state of Montana, for the Coyotes and their community, it was actually a decision 2 years in the making, back to when the Montana High School Association announced its enrollment requirements had changed, and any school with an enrollment between 66 and 130 would be eligible to play 8-man football. Shelby, continually one of the smallest in terms of Class B enrollment, had been well within that range for years. So MTN Sports sat down with Shelby head football coach Mike White, as well as Superintendent Elliott Crump, to discuss the decision to make that petition and move down to the 8-man football fields, the process that it took to get there, and the blowback that the community has received since making that move.
We're sitting at 114 right now as of today. We've been right in that between 110 and 120 for the past 5 years, and you know, if the number's 130, it makes sense for us to play 8-man football.
Shelby's 114 students during the 2018-2019 school year matched last year's enrollment. Both of those down from the 118 students in 2015 and 16 and 117 the following school year. Despite the trend, though, the Coyotes weren't planning on making any immediate moves.
You know, it really wasn't something that was on our radar. We didn't start thinking about it until it was 2 years ago when the MHSA made that decision to drop Class C from 119 to 103. And then when they did that, they also made that change for 8-man to go up to 130. And so when they did that, it was the middle of our season, and they asked schools to apply to either go down or to remain where they were, and we weren't ready to do that yet. And so we talked with our board and we said, you know what, we're going to play our football season. We're not even going to think about it until after football season. By then it was too late to make any changes. We talked about it throughout the year, and then we got to June, got to the summertime, and we actually started having that conversation, met with some of our community members, and we decided that it was something that we needed to pursue. And so at that point we put in the application. I think it was our June board meeting, put that in. Went to MHSA. They made the decision after the season, and we had a successful season last year, second in state. They denied it at that time. We were questioning why, so we sent some information in to ask why. They asked us to come down to the MHSA meeting. We went down to that meeting. We took a look at the numbers, and I'm like, well, you're within the range. Why aren't you playing 8-man football?
We looked at it a couple years ago. We knew that the numbers were dropping down. We knew that the Class C, they were looking at moving their numbers up a little bit just based on a handful of things. You know, and really the whole state has been affected. If people look back over the last 10 years, teams dropping down. So anyway, we looked at it. We reached out to the community. We did those types of things. We did our homework. And we started this all before even last year's season, you know, kind of seeing where we'd be at. And then it just kind of progressed from there. You know, we look down at what we have coming up for our classes, and they're relatively small. I know people seem to think 115 kids is a lot, but when you're used to 230 in your high school, it's not. We had 9 kids this year that came out that we were anticipating. We had a couple kids move in. We have a foreign exchange student. But to be totally honest with you, one of the things that I told the MHSA board when I was there is I'm going to get as many kids out to play football as I can. You know, and I think here in Shelby, we have 85% of our student body is involved in extracurricular activities, from FFA to athletics to speech and drama. You reach down to our junior high, and it's in the high 80s, even down to elementary. So good things are happening here in Shelby, you know, and our kids work hard. You know, I think the one thing that gets lost in all of this is these kids went to camp this summer. They're here 4 days a week in the summer. 2 days they do speed and agility. 2 days they're lifting. They're here 4 days a week at 7 in the morning lifting during the season. You know, and they're good kids. So I think in the end of it all, what we're trying to promote, and I think everybody would like to promote, is participation for our youth. I mean, the alternative, as we all know, is they could be out doing something that's not good. So we're glad that we have them with us.
Shelby has prided itself on athletic prowess for years, winning district, divisional, and state championships in a variety of sports. So when the community learned of its decision to reclassify, was there any hesitation from this proud Class B fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only Class B, Shelby was Class A at one time. So it's a different situation when you have families of 1 or 2 kids instead of families of, the small family had 7 kids back in the heyday. So, there's just not as many kids. You look at the Shelby population, the population of the community hasn't dropped that much. It's just the number of kids that families are having.
I'm hoping there was a lot of trust in, what we're trying to do and what our, how we see the future. And there's always going to be that, the people that hold on to it from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, but it's just isolated. I mean, change happens. Change happens in every part of the world, and it's just happened to affect Shelby right now.
The loudest concerns from naysayers, at least initially, regarding Shelby's move revolved around the Coyotes' second-place finish in the 2017 Class B playoffs. That, of course, saw the team win its first 3 games in the postseason by a combined 7 points. The first 2 on Wyatt Bruceman field goals, the third a late touchdown, followed by Bruceman's point-after touchdown for a 1-point win. That all before Eureka routed the Coyotes 47-7 in the Class B state championship game. So was it fair for a runner-up in a higher classification to drop down to that lower level?
I think, again, the biggest thing is we started this process over 2 years ago. Going into last season, we already knew that we were going to petition to move down. Last season was a magical year. I think we win our 3 playoff games by a total of 7 points. So I can't say that we were dominant there, but moving down was something that was in the back of our minds. We went through all the proper channels locally, and then as far as at the MHSA level, and did the right thing. So that was just how it went. Yeah, sorry people don't understand that.
Once the Coyotes opened the fall schedule, there were new apprehensions surrounding the newest 8-man club. Shelby picked up 9 players that hadn't played in prior years, bringing the roster total to 35, though only 14 were upperclassmen, 6 seniors, 8 juniors, raising questions as to why the Coyotes weren't on the 11-man field with that kind of participation.
I think 2 things. I think that, again, as a coach, I'm in the hallways every day. I'm working on kids for next year. I've got freshmen that didn't play this year that we're trying to get to 100% kids playing. And that's just how I approach it, And as far as the numbers, we've got a couple kids that are freshmen this year that played 7 JV games. They had brothers that were seniors last year when they were freshmen. They played, I think it was 3, and they went a whole month without football because other teams couldn't field the JV team. At times, we couldn't field the JV team. And I think that's important to develop those kids. Again, it goes back to participation. We're looking to get kids to participate. Would we have been able to play 11-man both ways this year? Absolutely. But next year, it would have been a different story. And the year after, it would have been a different story. So we tried to look at the big picture. And again, we have 9 extra kids. We were anticipating about 26 kids out for football, which is consistent, of where others are at. But those things happen too.
I think it's a really exciting thing for our kids. We have kids that came out because we're playing 8-man. If we were still playing 11-man, I don't think they would have gone out because they would have had to play at the varsity level. Right now, they're able to play on that C squad or that, I think Mike calls it a Frosh-Soft team, or however he refers to that. They're able to play those JV games rather than have to play varsity. And it's really a great opportunity for our kids to develop right now. And I'm super excited about our participation rates. We're above 85% right now across the board in the school, and I think our coaches are doing a fantastic job of getting kids to come out.
The third, though certainly not final, argument from those opposing Shelby's drop points to the program down the road in Fairfield. The perennial Class B power continually ranks near the bottom of enrollment in the classification, yet the Eagles remain on the 11-man fields, while many others, the likes of Shelby, Choteau, Joliet, Forsyth, Rocky Boy, Lodgegrass, St. Labray, and of course, dating back to prior years, Chinook, Fort Benton, and others dropped to the lower classification. If the Eagles can make it work, why can't others?
I don't know for sure. I think that obviously Les does a good job down there. I think they've gotten a strong tradition. I think they've been in the playoffs 15 straight years. This might be the first time since the early 90s that Shelby's made it 2 to 3 years in a row. So a little bit of tradition, and every community is different.
There appears to be no perfect answer to Montana's dwindling enrollment question, particularly in the smaller Class B towns. Shelby, only the latest in a long line of Class B schools having undergone change, though some, like Libby, have actually moved up, now in Class A. While numbers continue to fluctuate, administrators are monitoring enrollment projections, preparing for the next potential change, even if it's years down the road.
Fortunately, I think we've got great coaches, we've got a great athletic department, and they have a lot of kids coming out for all of our sports. So I don't see us dropping below that 103 mark. I see us remaining. If you do our projections, we actually do get over that 130 mark with our kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. If all of those kids stay until they're freshmen through seniors, we will finally break that 130 mark again. And there's other things that are going on that are pretty positive here in Shelby right now. There's some businesses coming in. There's some recent influx of money in companies. And so there's an opportunity for more people to come into Shelby. And if that happens and we get above that 130 mark, you're going to see us playing 11-man again. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out.
I think you're right. I don't know if there's going to be a perfect situation. We tried, I know Les and I talked a few years ago about maybe trying to get some 9-man going. I know Scott King over Malta was interested in it. Class C schools control that vote at the MHSA level, and right now I don't know if they were interested in that. I'm wondering if there'll be some talk about it, you know, if this will cause some chatter. I don't want it to, in the sense that it's a bad thing, but I do know that more schools are getting smaller, and especially up here on the High Line. And it was us this year that got all the blowbacks. Next year it'll be somebody else, and you know, so we're used to it, and we're just going to do what we think's best for Shelby and what's best for our kids, and we're moving forward.
As for other programs considering a classification change, Crump believes the most important thing is beginning the process in your own backyard.
First thing, I think you need to communicate with your community. You don't want to make that knee-jerk reaction. And I felt like if we would have gone 8-man, our first year opportunity to do that, I think it would have been a knee-jerk reaction. We needed to get our community behind it before we made the decision. And that doesn't mean everybody's behind it. There's still going to be people out there in our community that say we should be playing 11-man. And you know, that's something that we have to deal with. But we did have the conversation. We talked with a lot of our community, talked with our board, and had this conversation for a year before we made the decision. So that would be my advice.
Now, where will the Coyotes go from here? 5, 10, 15 years down the road? What about some of the other programs across the state facing these similar enrollment numbers? Only time will tell. Richie Melby, MTN Sports.